So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. It looks like we've got 25 people in, so that's awesome. This is session 2 of Gentrification and Poverty in Communities of Color. Welcome everybody. This session will be a little bit different than the first in the sense that we hope to talk about solutions and how we as a community can work together to address some of the issues that will be covered. We will be going until 1 o'clock and we'll talk a little bit about how we're going to run this session. Oops. Sorry, my clicker doesn't, there we go. Before we get us started, I wanted to just take a moment of silence to honor this amazing gentleman, Congressman Robert Lewis. As you all know, he survived a brutal beating by the police during a landmark 1965 march in Selma, Alabama. He became a towering figure of the civil rights movement and a longtime congressman whose consistent fight was for social justice. I also wanted to acknowledge many others who have lost their lives way before their time. We want to continue our fight for social justice and do that in their name as well as Congressman Lewis. So I just wanted to take a moment of silence to honor all of these folks. Thank you. So for this session, I just wanted to bring up a couple of things about how we wish to engage during the session. It's really difficult when you're not in the room together. So I just wanted to ask people to take space to speak their voice, but also make space for others, acknowledging that some of us have a lot to say, but there's also others that may want to also share their thinking. We want to build and maintain brave space. We want to encourage people to be courageous in what they say. We also want to encourage you to applaud and give thumbs up as a show of support to those that are speaking. If you look at the bottom of your screen, which I cannot see, you will see a symbol that shows emojis, and you can applaud or you can give a thumbs up or give a different face of approval. We want to encourage people to have one conversation so that we can hear the person speaking. Please be on mute unless you're speaking. We also encourage you to use the chat box and type in any of your thoughts and or questions. My co-host Elizabeth Stewart will be helping me manage the chat box and acknowledge anything that comes in. And remember, the focus is about empowerment and respect. We're going to start us off by showing an amazing video. So I'm going to stop share and pull that up. It's a video called "Can Experts Solve Poverty?" And so give me a moment and I'm going to pull that up. It's about 13 minutes long.
The world is not round. It has edges we can fall from and faces staring in entirely different directions. And I thought the world was huge, but it is not. It's in our hands. We can hold it, change it, turn it, shake it. We can solve it. But not by sheer luck or chance. We must be taught to learn.
We all have experts in our lives. Computer experts, plumbing experts, legal experts. You name the problem, and there's someone out there who specializes in addressing that problem. Experts help us do things better than we can do them ourselves. Whether it's a broken car, a computer glitch, or even a broken heart, call the expert, they'll fix us right up. So who do we call when society is broken? Who do we call when over 1 billion people live in poverty, unable to meet the basic requirements to sustain their lives? Or when the wealthiest 2% of the world owns 50% of the world's assets? We call experts, of course, poverty experts. But who is a poverty expert, and can experts solve poverty? To become an expert, you must know some specific field better than the average person. Poverty experts have a variety of technical specializations, including development studies, engineering, economics, public health, medicine, public policy, and now, more than ever, business. With any of these degrees, a poverty expert gains the power to diagnose and propose solutions to problems that affect others, in particular, the poor. Now, this sounds perfectly fine, doesn't it? Poverty expertise, however, presents us with a conundrum. We certainly need specialized technical knowledge. I want an environmental engineer to make sure my drinking water is clean. And I want a doctor to take care of me when I get sick. However, expert-led approaches to alleviating poverty turn political and social problems into technical problems. But how do they do this? Let me start by telling you a story. In a fantastic book, Rule of Experts, author Timothy Mitchell tells the complex story of a particularly insidious form of malaria that devastated parts of Egypt starting in 1942. The malaria parasite was carried by a mosquito species previously unknown in Egypt, and over a 3-year period, it infected nearly 750,000 people, killing between 1 and 200,000. To defeat this scourge, technical experts zeroed in on what they saw as the source of the problem, the malaria-spreading mosquito. What the eradication experts failed to recognize was that the very problem they identified and set out to defeat was created by previous rounds of technical, expert-led interventions. The spread of the mosquito was made possible by the engineering of railways, a dam on the Nile River, and irrigation canals, by the industrialization of agriculture, and by the economics of cash crops, in this case, sugarcane. Each of these technical interventions were intended to develop and improve Egypt, and yet each created more problems. True to form, while the mosquito was eventually eliminated from Lower Egypt in 3 years, in their wake, the eradication campaigns created multiple new problems stemming from the use of highly toxic recalcitrant chemicals, DDT in particular, to be tackled by yet another set of technical experts. The thing is that technical experts see the problems of poverty in very specific ways, and this informs how they devise their solutions. So, how do experts see poverty? Here I want to draw upon the work of anthropologist Tanya Lee in her tremendous book, The Will to Improve. As Lee describes, experts are trained to draw boxes around human problems and transform them into relatively straightforward technical problems. Experts draw their boxes, and then they only look at what is inside of them. These boxes, however, hide things. To start, these boxes hide context. In Egypt, experts drew their box around the mosquito. Doing so enabled them to ignore the context in which malaria wreaked its havoc, poverty. Poverty had created malnutrition and increased reliance on sugarcane, leaving the poor more susceptible to malaria than the wealthy. But these were not identified as problems. The mosquito was the problem. Moreover, expert boxes hide history. Problems are treated like snapshots that exist independent of time. The historical forces that led to these snapshots, however, are silenced. In Egypt, hiding history allowed experts to ignore the colonial policies that unjustly forced small farmers off of their land. These policies enabled some to capture great wealth through the dispossession of others. Malaria, in turn, was a symptom of the poverty that resulted. Finally, when they hide history and context, what experts really hide is politics. They disregard questions of power and inequality. Instead, experts describe problems as though they are simply natural. No one was involved, no one is responsible. Perhaps they came from the ether. As a result, the solutions they propose not only ignore the political foundations that lie underneath the problems, but in fact, they help prevent challenges to the status quo. There is more to these boxes. Not only do politics, history, and context disappear, but even the experts disappear. When experts draw their boxes, they draw themselves out of their pictures. Let me take myself as an example. You see, I'm trained as an engineer. We aren't required to read books like Rule of Experts or The Will to Improve in engineering classes. Our education is entirely technical and trains us to look at the world through a lens that enables us to build, to produce, to innovate. This training, however, never challenges us to reflect upon our own place in the world and to understand our location in the work that we are doing. We are, in effect, invisible to ourselves. Our invisibility prevents us, or does it protect us, from recognizing the ways that many of the problems we seek to address are the results of previous technical interventions by equally competent, specialized, and well-meaning experts. Consider the case of your dirty drinking water. As an engineer, to solve your problem, I'll bring you filters. Or maybe I'll bring you chlorine. Perhaps even a UV disinfection system. Whatever technology I bring, I'm certain it can clean your water. I'll even sell it to you cheap, less than it costs to produce, and provide free classes on how to use it. What I won't do, however, is ask questions. I won't ask why your water is dirty. I won't ask who got the water dirty. And I won't ask why you're expected to be individually responsible for cleaning your own water. If I were to ask, I might learn about the economists who, in an attempt to stimulate economic development, promoted the construction of a factory upstream. Now you drink water contaminated with the waste that comes out of that factory. Or I might also learn about the agricultural experts who, in an attempt to increase farm productivity, gave farmers fertilizers and pesticides to cover their fields. These fertilizers and pesticides now choke the stream you drink from. The list could go on and on. With each techno-fix, another set of problems is created, and a new crop of technical experts are employed to draw new boxes and devise new solutions. However, these solutions are never enough, as the poor are constantly forced to live on the margins. Tackling symptoms with technical interventions simply moves problems from one location to another. The problems continue because they are fundamentally political, not technical. Ultimately, when technical experts see poverty and draw boxes, they separate who can help, experts, from those who are subject to help, the poor. Experts see poverty as deficiencies of the poor. They have the problems. The other side of this equation, we don't have the problems, and so we must have the solutions. The idea that we must civilize the savages and modernize the backwards peoples has historical precedence, the perverse white man's burden stemming from the colonial sense of trusteeship. This framing locates problems within the poor themselves and renders structures of oppression invisible. It targets the poor rather than the forces that both create their poverty and enable our wealth. Now, I want to be clear about something. These technical experts really do want to make the world a better place. Yet their claim of expertise is a claim to power. It is a claim that they know what is best for someone else. Their exercise of this power, however, often falls short, and there remains a gap between what is desired and what is achieved. If you are a technical expert, that is, in part, because the technocratic way that you have been trained to see and solve problems is a way that does not challenge power. If you're an engineer, you've been taught how to overcome the limits of nature in the name of human progress. You haven't been taught to ask whose progress is being limited, nor who define the supposedly natural limits that you have been called upon to overcome. If you're a medical doctor, your education has taught you how to fix broken bodies. That education didn't teach you to ask how those bodies became broken in the first place, and it didn't teach you how to recognize nor how to address the social determinants of disease. If you're an economist, your training taught you to leverage markets to promote never-ending economic growth. That training didn't enable you to manage the distribution of scarce resources, much less how to maximize social, non-economic values. We need more than technical experts. If we want to solve poverty, then we must first recognize that it is a problem that has no technical solution. It cannot fit in a box. While the symptoms might fit nicely in boxes, the structures that support and maintain these symptoms do not. We don't need to solve the symptoms, we need to dissolve the structures. We need to get political, to contextualize our work, and to engage with history. Depoliticizing poverty by viewing it as a technical problem to be solved by experts is not only ineffective, it gets in the way of real change. So what kind of expert are you? What boxes has your training taught you to draw? How have you learned to define problems? And through what lens do you see poverty? And finally, how might you come to understand what is missing from inside the boxes you draw?
Okay, I hope you all found that worth the time to share. While I am shifting back to the PowerPoint, I did not introduce myself when I started. So my name is Rocio Bundis. I'm with the Department of Family and Children's Services with the Prevention Bureau. Welcome to those that may have joined a little bit late. We started off with that video and we have not had any discussions with the presenters as of yet. I will post as soon as we get back on track. I am going to post the information about the video so that if any of you wish to share that in your own circles, you are certainly welcome to. I also want to just make a quick comment that poverty and gentrification go together. So I think this is a very appropriate video to share with you all. And I also want to invite you all to use the chat box to share your thoughts about the video. I have so many thoughts I want to share, but I can use the entire time if I did. So please feel free to engage in conversation in the chat box about what you feel about it. So I wanted to just start by really basically talking about what does gentrification actually mean. So it's the process of repairing and building homes and businesses in a deteriorating area, accompanied by an influx of middle class or affluent people, and that often results in the displacement of earlier, usually poorer residents. So I'm going to pass the baton to my co-worker and colleague, Elizabeth Stewart. She works with the Prevention Bureau, and she's going to facilitate a conversation with our two speakers. Again, if you have questions and comments, please use the chat box. Both she and I will be monitoring that. And we'll be trying to connect those questions and comments with the speakers. So I will pass the baton to Elizabeth.
All right, welcome everyone. Glad you are with us this morning, and excited to have Tamika Ellsworth and Forrest Williams with us once again. And I guess I wanted to take a minute and just do a brief bio. Some of you folks weren't here at the last presentation we did, so I wanted to take a minute and just share a little bit about them. Tamika, give everyone a wave if you would. They'll know who you are. There she is. All right, Mr. Forrest Williams, give everybody a wave there. All right. All right, let me tell you a little bit about Tamika. I met Tamika a few months back. We have a mutual colleague, business coach, and I was very excited about Tamika's energy in wanting to help people really address their needs for home ownership and just understanding financial literacy, period. She hosts, she was been on a season 6 of the TV show, The American Dream. Her passion for real estate echoes her love for a great success story. Tamika's award-winning 16-year career in real estate started when she became a Union 405 carpenter in San Jose, from building churches, orphanages, and homes for the homeless in Tijuana, Mexico, to volunteering with the Peninsula Habitat for Humanity. She quickly understood that home ownership is an essential tool for generational wealth building. Home ownership is an essential tool for generational wealth building. So if you all could welcome Tamika and Mr. Forrest Williams. He is a 48-year resident of San Jose, living in the Blossom Valley in the Oak Grove School District and Eastside Union School District within Santa Clara Valley. He lives also within the Santa Clara Valley Water District number 1. He's currently a member of the Oak Grove School District Bond Oversight Committee, Santa Clara County Commissioner, a board member of the Santa Clara Valley Science and Engineering Fair Association, and is a board member of the Black Infant Health Advisory Board. He is also a former city council member in November 2000. He was reelected in 2004 and completed his term in 2008 due to term limits. He represented more than 92,000 residents of the Santa Teresa, Edenvale, Coyote Valley area of South San Jose. Mr. Forrest Williams has been embedded in the community on several levels. So I want you just to welcome them. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off with some questions I'm going to pose to them in reference that will actually support what we saw in the video. In reference, of course, as well as gentrification and poverty. If you have, as Rocio mentioned, if you have any questions, please put those in the chat box. We're going to kind of flow through a little bit. And if there's a question that comes up at the time that we're talking, Rocio will let me know that, hey, this might be a good point to interject a question. Otherwise, we will take questions. We'll take time for question and answer at the end of our engagement here. Okay, so let's start off with Mr. Forrest Williams. Based on what we saw in the video and the definition of gentrification, can you talk with us a little bit about the correlation of gentrification and families that enter systems such as child welfare or juvenile hall or adult incarceration? Yeah, take yourself off of mute. You're on mute, Mr. Forrest. There you are.
Well, thank you, everyone. And how's everyone? I hope everybody's doing well. I know we're on a special situation with being sheltered in place and not able to be in person to talk to you. But our view of the situation of gentrification, the idea is a profit motive. We look at cities. They want to improve areas based on their long-term goals of growth, jobs. We look at personal people who have the wealth to do what they will purchase and improve an area, and they're in it for the profit motive. And there may be individuals who have facilities that they would want to improve. And it's all about profit, about the results of gentrification. Gentrification is just a process, but the end result is wealth accumulation or enhancing wealth. In terms of these systems that we look at, that individuals that are displaced or individuals who are less able to secure wealth, we're looking at gentrification as one way to do that. But in order for us to talk about preparing and getting acclimated to the idea of wealth, we need to satisfy and put the person in the mode where they will think about it or be receptive to the discussion about gentrification and how they can use it to gain wealth. And I think that's the part that the social organizations and those that are responsible for our societal ills, or we have social workers who look at how the environment is, growth laws, everything that associate with making the individual whole and living a good life and being able to move to the next level in terms of savings and or even considering gentrification to the extent of leaving a legacy for their family. We got to look at the whole individual. We got to get them in the state of being ready to receive the recommendations as a result to as gentrification offers the opportunity for them.
Can you talk a little bit more about, you talked about getting into the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking a lot about, and that's, incarceration as well, or juvenile probation, that there's a particular criteria that we're looking at as, and saying a family needs to have A, B, C, and D in order to either leave those systems. But the ongoing or the more sustainable need, can you talk a little bit more about building that buying into the idea of building wealth and financial empowerment, simply because a lot of families that come into the system we know are mid to low poverty level families. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Well, when I look at individuals, in many cases, the programs that we have today mostly address the symptoms. They don't really address the causes, or I would say the root causes of
Mm-hmm.
the situation that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And if I would talk to you about wealth, or securing wealth, or sustaining your present lifestyle, or being able to support your family, or if there are problems associated with that, I must resolve those problems and get the family and together to the extent that they are willing to listen to me about what the opportunities that gentrification provides for them, or sustaining wealth. An example would be if my arm is broken and I only address my arm, but there are other issues associated with it. I'm just fixing the arm, but my leg still has a problem. So even though my arm is addressed, I use the arm as allegorical in the sense that if a particular program only addresses a particular specialty, then that symptom of the others, it causes me to have a need for someone else. So in other words, you need to have a wholeness of the individual or the family to understand what will put them in the state to be receptive
Mm-hmm.
to getting out of the particular situation that they're in, or accepting the responsibility for themselves, for their family, education, food, clothing, housing. All of those things are addressed, but they're not addressed in a wholeness of the individual to fix all of those issues so that they can be talked to regarding wealth accumulation, regarding opportunity to provide for the family, to get out of the system altogether. Those issues needs to be addressed, and they all, as a wholeness of the individual, has to be addressed so that the person now has a mindset that will allow them to concentrate and listen to, or be amenable to, getting out of the situation that they're in, and then listen to what we can do to provide for them in the future. It will take the responsibility of them as well as us to move them out of that system.
Awesome. Tamika, you want to chime in at all here? You're on mute. You got to take yourself off mute. There you
Yeah. Hi, and thank you again for having me. Thank you, Forrest, and just kind of setting the stage on. And I do want to like mindset. It's a huge thing. Now, granted, I'm in the industry, been in the industry for a while now, and I've seen many situations where mindset, when it comes to families even wanting to attempt, for instance, home ownership, and the mindset is one of, I'd rather pass down my Section 8 benefits than to actually generate, wealth for my family apart from that. The mindset was, I'm afraid that, things won't get passed down to my children versus wealth being passed down. It's, the other benefits that are, from the government being passed down. So I've seen firsthand that some won't even go into home ownership or going that direction because they feel that it's not even possible, or it's just, it's too far gone. And I know we'll talk about it later. I don't know if you want me to get into it now, but, it just more education needs to be in place. Not only just with home ownership, that's one part to it, because believe it or not, it's a lot more attainable than you think. But the mindset of knowing that the cycle can actually stop. What's been passed down generationally does not have to continue. And those that I come into contact with, I don't deal a lot with people that have 20% down, on homes. I deal with those that maybe have down payment assistance and need help, but it all starts with the shift of knowing that this is even possible and getting the resources and the access to the resources to cause them to make different changes and think differently is really what it is. In a lot of ways, thinking differently. And when you know that you can think differently about something that's so unattainable to most, because that's what the media promotes. That's what everyone promotes, especially over here in the Silicon Valley. But when I give you examples of people that have actually went through the system and who they are, and you're shocked and thinking that, oh, wow, how did this person? Yeah, absolutely. This person sure did. 0% down. Absolutely. They had a program that helped them. They didn't put any, so it's again, the shift on mind and the education, I think is going to be a huge factor in basically empowering people in order for, such mindsets as poverty mindsets in order to change.
Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit more about the generational, let's talk a little bit more about generational transmissions, right? You talked about the belief systems. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we had discussed before, and I had mentioned it again. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen with regards to this whole perpetual system of mother, grandparent, grandfather, just kind of continuing on. A lot of it has to do with displacement, and gentrification is a big component to that, right? It's in displacement, and displacement, what we know, and I kind of discussed about that before, is usually they say is an effect of poverty, but in all actuality, when you're displaced from, especially from kids or just family and period, kids as well, but when you're displaced, it does limit, number one, your growth. And a lot of times you're ending up going into areas that, from one area actually to a worse area, and not being able to get out of that cycle. And that's unfortunate. But it's the truth. Displacement, forced moving, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this too, forced moving, evictions from having poor landlords, extreme rent increases. Of course, that's what we've been seeing a lot of in a lot of areas, living in shelters, obviously more groups experience this than others, and it happens to be low income households. Right? Even, talking about soft evictions, right? Like those landlords that say that they're good, but they're ignoring mold issues. They're ignoring requests to fix items, harassment, health and safety type of things. So it's not even your blatant, just bad landlord kind of things and just the rental aspect, but it's just that even the soft things that people are doing to hopefully push people out, or they don't have a voice. And I think it's so important to not only talk about displacement, to talk about the ways that people who are renting and actually to get themselves up to a different place where they can probably focus on home ownership, but educating them on what is a bad landlord. what things do you actually have the rights in order to do, to say, to not be displaced in a lot of ways. You know, you have power, you have a lot more power than a landlord, but a lot of times it's fear, or a lot of times because you don't know. But I think, you know, in those situations, in order to help displacement, it is knowing your rights and knowing the things that you can do in this market, especially if you're being faced with being kicked out of housing, because there are a lot of resources, but being able to provide those resources, especially to those going through the foster care system or going through the system having difficulties, is probably easier than they think, but you got to have a voice.
I like to chime in I think the approach oftentimes, often the solution to some of the issues that we have with the low-income families, the solution to these problems that we have with these families is that the solution is a middle-class solution. It is, well, you need to be here in order to measure up to say, I'm successful. But if you really look at the system totally, it has denied the low-income families the opportunity to reach some of these goals that we'd like to see them reach. As an example, the father, he's the lowest he's the last to be hired and first to be fired. And that the income that he's given is not adequate to support a family in the environment that he's in. It is a struggle. It's a constant struggle to be there. And the one small trip or failure or whatever, it's that he's out. There's no in between. He's out altogether. And so that struggle continues. And so when we address them with the issues that they've got, that should be one of the consideration of economically, where is that family in terms of the economy? What does the system force him to be into that situation? And how do we convey to that family that you have an opportunity to get out of this situation, but it will take education and it will take time and commitment to get out. There is a way out. Mm-hmm. It's just that oftentimes they don't want to buy in because they have this feeling that it's going to be that way. It's supposed to be that way. There's no way I can get out. I can't get out. I'm in this rut. So our solutions now have got to be a reassurance that they can. Show them an example of how, and then work with them to the extent that they will have to buy in and we will have to buy in. But the idea of buying in is that over time, you will begin to see how you're able to get out of this situation.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's an important piece as well. And please chime back in, Tamika. When we're talking about empowerment, and Tamika mentioned earlier the word, the fear. Like the fear is that I can't do it because I've been in the system, or I've had so many failures. So especially when we're providing services, I myself worked in juvenile hall years ago and recognized the generational transmission, right, of gang family life. Mm-hmm. Recognized kids were feeling, 16, 17-year-old kids are feeling like, this is all I know. I won't be able to change. How do I get out of this? I'm probably going to die by the time I turn 21, 22. That's the life, right? So offering empowerment. So what give some ideas, Forrest or Tamika, on ways we can empower, whether we're coming from the perspective of service provider or a neighbor or an educator.
Right.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Well, one of the things that I'm extremely passionate about, and one of the reasons why I started Faith in home buying, is number one, to address the fear part, because I think, granted, it's from a faith component as far as it being just having faith in the process, having faith in God, right? But again, ultimately, it was a mindset of getting past the fear part of thinking that I can't do this. Once you get past that part of thinking I can't do it, and empowering them not only with just the resources, but giving real life examples on people that actually have made it through and actually have went through on the other end, because a lot of people don't see that. The fear causes because you don't see it or you've never seen it in a lot of ways, or it's unknown territory. It's talking about financial literacy. So that means I was giving courses on, your credit, giving courses on how to even budget and save, which is a huge thing. That's low to moderate. It doesn't matter. Like, there's a lot of people that grow up not knowing how to balance a checkbook, not understanding credit is probably far greater and far bigger of a thing than even having money in a lot of ways. Most people think that having the money and I can get whatever I want. No, have good credit and you can really get whatever you want and not have to waste so much money. It's being able to really get down to the core, and you can easily give someone a job and tell them just make money and work hard. But if they don't know how to manage it nor know how to save it, what good is that going to do? There's people that have great jobs, they work very, very hard, and they actually can do home ownership. But because they don't have a down payment, they think that it's not possible, right? But it's how do you talk to them? How do you bring those courses and that classes and those resources? And I'd say even empowerment programs. So for instance, having programs where the incentive is at the end of whatever you're learning. So to keep people inside a working mindset. Maybe there are jobs, maybe there are those in the community, especially people having problems getting jobs or, getting a foot up, right? But there's an incentive. We all know that being stable in a home environment is very important, not only to a family, but to children for their health. Number one, to their health, their mental health, scholastic, health. Your zip code is pretty much all important if you can maintain that, but being able to provide houses or courses that stimulate home ownership. So for instance, at the end of a course or requirement that you fulfill, there is maybe incentive for down payment assistance in coming into a program, or helping to get to the next step of home ownership. Maybe working with landlords around the area. The good ones are the ones that really do want to have help. And they are some of them, and I know that there's programs in more like San Francisco area too, but where there's programs that they do like maybe a rent to own or a lease to own on maybe one of their properties or such, where you actually stimulate people knowing that going through and doing courses and sticking with a program, in the end, home ownership is a very big and a real possibility for you.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Forrest.
There was one thing that I have written down is that in order for us to approach these families or that are in the difficulties or having problems and that type of thing, I think the thing is that we're going to have stability. We got to get them to the point where their mindset is we're able to talk to them about home ownership, that we're able to talk to them about wealth accumulation. Because if the mindset, as you said earlier, Tamika, that the mind is the key, and acceptability is the key, and education, all those things are all wrapped up in this, but they have to have the confidence that what we're giving them or explaining to them will work. So I would take our foster youth as an example. They were at the beginning stages of their lives. They're finishing high school. They're ready to go to college and that type of thing. And I don't know how many of them have a focus as to I'm going to own. As you said earlier, there are things that pop in their mind. Those things that are quick and they satisfy quickly, like a car. Oh, I want a nice, fine car, right? But then that car depreciates so quickly as you drive it off the showroom floor. And so that investment disappears.
Mhm.
If I invest in a home, it may take me a longer time to get there, but then I have a return on that investment. So the understanding of how to use the dollars that you have to have them have a return and growth rather than the glamour type of investment that has no return whatsoever. So I think education is so important that whomever we have or whatever services we provide, be it social services, be it housing, be it whatever, that idea in that discussion should be about wealth accumulation, about how to, even though you may have a small amount, there is a percentage amount that you can put aside to help that grow. And over time, you can have some assurance that it's working.
Mm-hmm.
And that the idea of housing and ownership, I don't know, programs that we might have that will allow them to be in a place and that they have a commitment and the service provider has a commitment that they together now move ahead and the service provider gradually disappears and the person takes on that responsibility, because we're monitoring this, seeing that they actually are going to accept what we're saying, and then we're there to monitor it as we progress through it, and then gradually as we begin to take hold, then we bow out. I think that understand that stability thing is the thing that we need most of all, to understand how to get to them through the things that we need to tell them about gentrification and how they can participate in it and grow from it. Now, I also looked up another definition for gentrification, and it is really about the person now. It says that gentrification is the process of making a person, an activity, or a thing more refined and polite. So I apply that to the people and just say, we want to refine them, make them better, enhance them, with the outlook of how we can enhance them through wealth accumulation, how life will be improved over time. And if we do this type of program, you buy into this, we can move you. If you would do these things, the results will be, you'll be more polite. You have more politeness in that sense, mean more aware, more astute to what the benefit of having wealth and how I can transfer that to the next generation to benefit them.
That's great. And as you were talking too, I was just thinking about, I remember one thing that you had mentioned to me in our planning process and talking was that you've always told your kids home ownership first and foremost.
Right.
Home ownership. Why? Because you are investing.
Right.
Investing, right? The other thing I think about it, this time that we're in right now, is that in our culture, in our community, in our world, that we're at a place of looking and saying, hey, we know that the racist issue has been going on for years and years and years. And Tamika, last session, the first session you presented, we talked about the redlining and policies, right? And policies that has hindered the ability for folks to really be able to move forward in certain areas of our communities. But now we're in a time where this issue of gentrification and addressing poverty issues is really key if we're really going to flip the culture and make an equitable and make opportunities equitable for everyone to have the ability to move forward and not be suppressed, whether by system or policies or laws. It's really important for us to have these conversations simply because we don't want continued generations, right, of disproportionality. And that's bottom line, that's our interest, right? We don't want continued generational experiences of disproportionality or displacements. We want to stop this, and we've been talking about this for a while. How can we interrupt this process? And what I'm hearing Forrest saying, and please again jump in, Tamika, I'm hearing it's coming down to how do we build relationships with people to empower them? I believe that's what you guys are really getting down to. How we build relationships with folks so we can empower them to live the life that they can have the opportunity to live. Tamika, talk about that a little bit more with what you do.
Yeah, and kind of what I had spoke about before, when you have a strong community being able to rally against certain things being done in the community, right? That's huge. Community, we talked about in the last one, having community involvement, being a voice inside your community, your district, saying things that, need to be said. And I have a lot of people that at least in my life, that they're very active in doing that. And they have made changes, like when gentrification happens, and, big companies are come and change things in the area. We're talking about Menlo Park, we're talking about East Palo Alto. I've seen it firsthand, the changes that can happen. But the power of the voices that say, okay, you can change it, but you're not going to take away the names, or you're not going to, completely rewrite the whole history of this area, because there are, people invested in these areas. And so that being said, it's getting people mobilized, I think, in a lot of ways, that you do have a voice, and this is how you can be mobilized in your community. I think it's going to different communities and actually offering, which we do to an extent, I think, but offering, classes, courses more. We need so much more help when it comes to bringing information to people, and and educating people on, especially because a lot of our rental is a lot of our rental environment, but kind of what I mentioned before, it's rental assistance, understanding that there's actually programs and places that you can go for rental assistance, and bringing and having those readily available, right? There's also tenant counseling that you can get involved with, and understand that there's people that you can talk to if you're having a situation, and even if you may not be documented, whatever the case may be, that fear is there and you don't want to talk to someone, there are people that you can talk to, and bringing those resources to people. There's education on tenant laws. That's a huge thing that we should be having that all the time, where we have lawyers coming and talking to tenants, and talking to just those in the rental community about, hey, these are your rights. If you don't know this, well, let me tell you, these are your rights. And if you have a problem, I'm who you can talk to. And that could save probably half the rental market on their displacement and the things that they're going through. Talking about subsidized housing and rent stabilization programs, that meeting people kind of where they're at in their situation, and understanding you have power even at this level. But understand, okay, now you have power in this level. Now, guess what? There's another level that you have power with, and that comes to not just being a renter and paying someone else's, mortgage. You actually have power, with another step, what you can be the homeowner in a lot of ways, and own your own piece of property, and understand what wealth management is, or wealth creation for your generational line is. This is why it's important, because a lot of people don't understand why it's important. Why is it important to have a house that has down to my kids?
Tamika,
If they don't know, then why? I mean, most people don't. This is not even poverty kind of level. This is just in general. If you don't know why it's so important, then if it's not important to you, you won't mentally think there. You can't get you there. But when you understand why it's so important, why it's important to invest in maybe a duplex, to have your family come together. Some communities have it, but why it's important to come together as a community or a family and invest in these things, so that you have your own that you can pass down to your children. Because we didn't have that in a lot of our communities, especially in African-American communities. It wasn't a whole thing where you can pass certain things down. Why? Because you didn't have access to it. But it's the education and understanding why. If you know the why, you'll do better in understanding or getting to that point. So it's getting down really, really deep, and really educating people on the why. Why is it important? And yes, the Annetta Harris, Senior Harris, exactly. They were I saw that from Maryland in the chat. Exactly. They wanted to change the name. They didn't want to have the Annetta Harris Center. Exactly. But that was with community involvement and people talking and rallying together and saying, no, as a community, we've been here and we know that this is why this is important. You can change it and you can update it. That's great, but don't take away the name.
That's good. Rocio, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, how do I say this? Silicon Valley is a very expensive place to live, as is the East Bay, right?
Yep.
So I'm thinking, even for me, I have a good income. It's a struggle, you know, to be a homeowner. And so I'm thinking about those that may not have the blessing that I do. You know, how do they get out of that? How could I possibly afford it? I can't afford it, therefore
Oh, yeah.
I won't. So
Yeah,
how do you
absolutely.
help people get past that?
That's a great question. And that's one of the reasons why I present programs. And someone had it on the chat. I present programs like NACA. Now, granted, you know, is every program perfect? No, it's not. But I've known people that have actually gone through the programs and have went on the other side of it to homeownership. Some going through the program, then all of a sudden they find out, oh, I can actually qualify for a FHA or conventional loan, and they go for it. 3%, 5% conventional. There's a lot of different ways that you can make it work outside the box, believe it or not. And for instance, like NACA, I think on the resources, Elizabeth, that you might give that, but even Silicon Valley, most people don't even know that they actually have a whole a time frame where you can sign up for down payment assistance. So much so that it goes all the way up to 20% on some of the cases, 15%, 20%. And these are things that you don't have to pay back if you're in the home for maybe about 7 years or so. But still, most people will probably be in the home for, you know, 3 to 8 years is usually about an average. And these are programs that you don't have to pay back. But again, of course, it's not going to be out there to the whole world. Why? Because then everybody else would know about it. And I think that's another thing too. A lot of people keep things kind of close to them because they don't want everybody participating in them. That's why we need more programs to be able to do these so that we can have access to all, because it's there. It is out there and we have the money in order to do it. However, it's not being provided to people because everyone wants to kind of hoard it for themselves. That's why the lines are so long. That's why the lists are so long, but they have them. Santa Clara County specifically does have down payment assistance programs. NACA, there's AC Boost in East Bay. I had clients that actually went through it's called the AC Boost program. Now, granted, it's patience and you have to do a lot of paperwork, but do you know they qualified for it? So up to $150,000 they could get for their down payment, not having to pay it back either for a certain time, 3-year time frame, or if they were to sell their home before a certain time frame, then they would have to pay a percentage back in their equity, like an equity share. But then there's some you don't even have that. It falls off after about 7 years. So they have a lot of them out there. It's just, where are they?
Mm-hmm. Well, I like to chime in and directing my response to the question of it's a struggle. It is. It's a commitment too. I mean, you know, saving is not a really popular thing that he would do when you could think of, when a lot of people think about, I want to go out and I want to have a good time. I want to go to Vegas. I want to go to Tahoe. I want to go, you know, all these things that are instant gratification type things. And you say, well, I'm going to have to give up some of that. I'm going to have to make a sacrifice for home ownership or savings or bonds or stock or these things that I have to give. I have to have that thing has to be a priority for me. And that's what I'm suggesting, that somehow we have to get that ingrained in the individual about how to gather, gain wealth. It's going to take some action on the part of the individual. Mm-hmm. Now, when you say, you know, people will have a struggle to go into savings or wealth generation or wealth to pass down to the as a legacy to the next generation, they're going to have to be committed to that. And you tell them, you say, well, now look, you're going to get this house. It's going to be a struggle for you to get the house. But the appreciation, I will show you what the appreciation is going to be over time. Then ought to make you feel a little better. You get what I mean? You see them struggle to get in. But then as the appreciation that we tell them that if you invest, there's going to be a return. And now you're in a house and it is paying for itself over time. It's not that you got to, even though you invest, you're investing by making the note, but the appreciation now is greater than the note that you're paying. So therefore you're gaining wealth. So you got to focus on the end result. Where do I want to go and how do I get there? It may be bumpy at the beginning. It may be a struggle at the beginning to get there. But maybe I can't do it this year. Maybe next year I'll be in a better position to do it. But when I do, it will benefit me significantly more in the long run as if I would, if I did not save it. Suppose I didn't do anything, then you have zero at the end. But then if I do invest, then I struggle to invest, but then I'm at a point now where I can say, look at what results, how I'm growing, and that ought to be an incentive to keep pushing, and you see the results of the investments that you're making for wealth generation over time. And I think that somehow we got to get that inculcated into the minds of people and talking to them. All of our service programs should include that, a discussion on how to generate wealth. I don't care what it is, if it's a DUI or whatever, that if there's a service provider, somehow we've got to get them involved with the idea that you have this situation now, but you don't have to be this way. There's a better way. And the revolution that we're thinking about, we need to change the paradigm. It's got to be changed if we're going to get out of this culturally for the future. And we're at that precipice right now that the change is about to happen, and we should educate the youth and people that are in a situation that it's going to take more than just protesting and all that stuff. It's going to take some action, and it's going to take some thought. It's going to take some effort to move this culture from the point of where it has, people have automatically assumed it is, to where it should be. And I think those are things that we need to show and talk about and educate. I don't care where it is, even if it's on the corner. You can say, hey, look, we need to talk about this and show them real example about it. So I think that's going to be key to us moving, looking at how do we generate wealth. And even though it's difficult to get started many times, but the return is significantly greater down the road as you look at it. And we can show them the numbers and statistics and graphs and all of that.
That's great. That's great. Because I think that piece, again, you said it, it's like, this is the time. Like, we are in a season right now where we have to really empower and educate if we're really going to turn the tide of inequalities within our community. And I guess the one thing I think about too is that a lot of the families that we may be providing services to, or if you're a decision maker in our county, and so you have the landscape of the land, and you know that folks, people don't always get their voice at a table. So how do we again continue to empower that voice? And one key piece is knowing that even if people are in crisis, right? If somebody's in crisis, they're not thinking future, they're not thinking vision, they're thinking right now. But that doesn't mean that you don't plant those seeds. Just like you said, Forrest, right, about the guy that comes out, he has a DUI. Hey, we need to start planting those seeds to create the hope. We need to create vision. We need to help, but it's part of, it needs to be a part of our conversation in the work and the relationships that we do have. I think I want to open it up for questions. Anybody have any specific questions that they want to? I see Cox to everyone. Is there really grants and down payment programs too?
Yeah,
Tamika?
There's a lot of them. We have, I think I had sent you some resources as well. We need more of them. good God, we need more of them. We have millionaires and billionaires in this city, in this county, and I can do like my small part on things, but I think people have to understand that this is not just a you versus us versus them problem. It's not. And the more people can see and loosen up some pockets with some things and not be, so greedy when it comes to their information, and it comes to their knowledge, and it comes with even their money in a lot of ways. We can combat this. We really, really can. But it just, again, it takes probably the right people talking to the right people in order to get more programs in place, because we're such a rich area around here. As much as people are leaving in this area, I see it every day. There's people fighting to get in. That's why you have your multiple offer situations. That's where you have home prices going, crazy, because people are fighting to be over here. So people have money and they have the resources to do it. And I think it's talking to the right people and creating the right, whether it be nonprofits or creating even more of them in order to funnel money in order to help generate more awareness and more access to that information. I myself, I would have never become a carpenter if I didn't have access to the information, or it wasn't presented to me. Would have never thought about it as a young Black woman. I think I was 21 years old. I would have never went in that direction as a trade. And I'm thankful that I did, because that trade ended up getting me to where my career is right now. But it was because I had a little bit of access. I was a little bit curious about wanting to go into that trade. And, it's bringing those type of things too, I think, not just your regular education, but opportunities that are outside the box for people. You don't always have to go through the track of a 4-year college or such. It's also bringing the trades, back and a lot more focus to those, and understanding that that's where hope happens, fear happens. Well, I can't do it. Well, could you do this? Here's another alternative, and having more of those programs. We just don't have enough. We don't have enough.
That's good.
Oh,
I see Shelly Shelly H. You have your hand up, Shelly. You have a question for Tamika?
and then Marilyn. So Shelley and then
Just
Marilyn.
a question. Hi, everyone. I'm a recent home buyer, and I've had some issues with my background years ago. However, this is my first home purchase. I am over 50 and I am single.
Congratulations.
Yes. But I did purchase 60 miles from my employer.
Mm-hmm.
However, COVID is here and now I'm teleworking. So there are solutions. However, it was a process, and I think mostly, and we didn't speak a lot about this, my peers, I got around a team of women who were in the same situation that I was or had been in, and they had transitioned their lives and they bought homes. And it started off with just we play this game called Pacino, and monthly we would play. There were about 9 members, 11 members in the group, and it started with one person saying, I'm going to buy a home. Over 11 years ago, and she bought a home, and she talked about the process. And when we would meet once a month and we would play this game, and they've been playing a lot longer than I am. And so I wanted to make that very important, that it is the peers that you're with, the people that you speak and you tell your dream of home owning. Because I'm going to tell you, 4 years ago, I didn't care about buying a home. And I started participating in this group with these women, and things miraculously started happening and put me in place that I was able to purchase my home. One thing that happened was I ended a relationship, and I'll say this really quick in probably a minute. I ended a relationship, and in that relationship, we were interdependent with each other financially, and I needed a place to stay. And someone told me about a girlfriend who managed a property that was empty in East Palo Alto. And it was like, okay, $500 a month for me to stay in this home. So that was just an amazing thing, being in amidst peers that say, hey, you're looking for something. And then these things started happening where I was in a program with Operation Hope. John Hope Bryant started this whole program throughout the US, and he started the financial literacy home buying process. And they told me because I was paying $500 based on my income, I would probably pay about $2,300 in mortgage. So that $1,700 I had to save as if I was paying us the $2,300. And so this process started that, whoa, I saved the money. And now, you know, that's about approximately right. I do have some fears sometimes of repairs. I'm in a nice, wonderful home. It doesn't, I mean, I'm sure eventually I will need, but I just want to go back and reiterate the part about the peers and the mentors that it is important to have in place. If you guys ever need me to speak on that or have people that have issues with believing that they can, I'm definitely available to do that. But I did have people that sowed into that fertile place that seed was planted, that I could do it.
I think that's great. Thank you for mentioning that, because when that's the very thing, when people come to me and I have, whether it be single women, it don't matter. And a lot of them do happen to be women. A lot of them happen to be single moms that come. And my biggest thing is telling them, you know what, congratulations. So the first thing is taking the step to talk to someone about it. That's the biggest thing, getting it. And I mean, I could take it biblically though, but you know, the ground, a lot of times you hear it, but it's falling on non-fertile ground. And you mentioned that. And it depends on when that seed is continually planted. So again, a lot of these families, and you know, we can kind of look at it like that. A lot of the times when you talk to someone, they're not ready, but you're still planting the seeds. You're still planting the seeds. So whether they're going in, like what Forrest said, or they're going through a DUI situation, or going through a situation in the jail, whatever it may be, it's constantly being thrown at them what possibilities can happen, peer groups. Then you start talking about it more. Then all of a sudden, and this is always was what happens when you get to the position of talking to me, it's, gosh, I've been seeing this so much. I see your stories. I see these people having, I don't even know how they happen, but I think I'm ready. I want to try to, again, it's continuing to have the seeds dropped. And sometimes the ground may not be right then and there because they're going through their own mess and whatever situation they're going through. But even as a kid going through foster care, knowing that these seeds are being planted, it's not going to go away. At one point, it's going to finally germinate. At one point, life is not going to, you know, strangle it. At one point, you know, the ground's going to be soft enough and fertile enough for it to actually grow and produce something. And I think, again, it takes time, but that takes commitment too for the people around. When you talk about peer groups, well, again, the people that are surrounded, as far as the counselors that are around, continuing to perpetuate, to continue to speak those things in those life, it'll happen eventually, because I think that's just, I think it's more of a spiritual connotation, but it is something that does happen. And I see it happen all the time when people talk to me.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you, Shelley, for sharing your story. I think, Rocio, you said it was Marilyn that had her hand up?
Marilyn has her hand up, and then there's a couple of great comments that I think would be great to emphasize after Marilyn speaks.
Okay.
Hi, Marilyn Duran. I just retired from the Santa Clara County Office of Education in June. And listening to Tamika and Mr. Williams, just working, and I just retired from foster youth services. I worked with foster youth for years. I worked at the children's shelter when it was open there on Union Avenue. But anyway, I just want to talk about, you know, when we talk about all of this, there's inequities in education for our foster youth. And also a lot of them, right when the pandemic happened, a lot of them were at the Opportunity Youth Academy. And a lot of them were just out of touch and not having access to internet or the computer access. And then just being in this county, I mean, in Santa Clara County, in the Silicon Valley with all the different companies there, it was just a shock to me that so many children and children in poverty did not have access. And so many of these people that are the decision makers in the county And I don't know how many are on this call right now, but those that are at the Board of Supervisors, the Superintendent of Santa Clara County Office of Ed, the Mayor's Office, and all of these people that are politicians, to me, and I don't like to badmouth anybody, but when you talk about these things, you have to have people in power, the decision makers with the money, the financial monies behind this to make things happen. I talked for years about children, the foster youth not having access to financial literacy. And I'm just glad to hear that Tamika is talking about this, and I really hope that it comes to fruition. But to make it happen, there needs to have money behind these programs, and the money has to be discussed at the decision makers level, which is the Board of Supervisors. Cindy Chavez, you know, they talk about foster youth, foster youth, foster youth. Well, where is the money that is, and I think they're joining forces and they're mixing funds, but to make things happen, there needs to be people like Tamika there, and other young foster youth that are there, and they know what they want, but having them take the lead and giving them some money, guiding them through the process on how to do these things, you know, for themselves. And also, I don't know, I just see there's a lot of other things, underlying things like the inequity in education, and just teaching these young people how to be independent of the system. You know, that was my biggest thing when I worked there. And I talked till I, you know, like I said, 26 years, and I didn't see anything come into fruition to teach these young people how to be independent of the system. Because if they're not taught that, then they're always there with their hand out. Oh, I can't do this. I can't, you know, do that. I just really, I'm glad to be on this call today, but there's some underlying things. And Mr. Williams, you were on the city council, and I believe you've done a lot of good work, but the politicians, and that's the county superintendent, she's a politician now. And I'm just saying, these people have to play a part, and they have to get out of this focus of themselves and to really try to focus on these young people to teach them independence. Get them out of that, you know, they hang around at the hub. The hub is a wonderful program, but I just really want to see these kids independent. So that was my spill. I can't say that enough, but I'm really happy to see Tamika here, and I hope that, and Rocio, I was with you in LA for the, what was that place we went to in Los Angeles with Jennifer Del Bono?
Yes, I remember that. I don't remember what the event was.
It was a Museum of Tolerance. Museum of Tolerance.
Yes,
and so anyway, but yeah, that's all. I just think that you guys need to take this up a notch. They're giving kids $1,000 extra a month. What are they teaching them with that $1,000 more a month that they're getting, you know, for their financial, to keep them in housing? But right now, I just can't say enough about that. But anyway, thank you very much. And good luck with that, Tamika.
Yeah, no, you bring up a really good point. Thank you so much for your comment, and just your service and just your service basically to the community and actually to the youth. You know, I think when I first did again a faith in home buying part, again, this is just a small thing for my church. It was an unction to do, because I'm like, why are these people in church moving and not having faith to do this? Like, if you can't have faith in the church, how are you going to do this, right? So it just started with that, but it started to get more and more where I'm like, oh, this is not just in this small environment. This is across the world and in different, you know, communities, and actually going in and talking about this stuff. This is across the board. And again, the biggest basis off of it is mindset. It's first and foremost, when you can get the mindset switched, and knowing that you can actually do something with that $1,000 that you're getting. Or let's just be real, like even the stimulus checks and the things that we're having, what have we been, if you're working and you're still getting a check or getting additional funds, even as an adult, a grown adult, are you investing that? By now you should probably have X amount of dollars. What have you done with that? So, you know, it's just, it's the education and the change of mindset of knowing that you can actually make it happen. You know, if I can go from losing 2 homes, you know, to finally getting, you know, a home. But, you know, how I did it is, you know, making sure, you know, that's a whole nother discussion. But from loss to even gain, there are programs and there's ways that you can make it happen. And I do hope that we do more programs that we're able to not just talk about it, because I'm not just a talking person. What are we going to do? Or, you know, going into places, if that means pro bono, going in and talking to people, I'm all for that. And getting a team of people just to say, fine, if you're not going to give us the resources and funds to do it, just go and do it. I'm that type of person. It's just knowing where to go and who to talk to, bring the people. So, you know, you don't need people to give you necessarily money to do these things. That's great when it comes, but a lot of times it's, let me do the work first and the money will follow. If it's all about, you know, just, you know, making sure I'm paid to do something, well, that's where the problem lies, versus it being, you know what, I'm doing this because I know there's a problem, there's a need, let me fill it and step into that, you know, point, get a team together and give this information to people.
I like to chime in. I think that it's very important. The last speaker who had a comment, that called in and had a comment. I know the system is designed and it's perpetuating what it was designed for. So we have to change that paradigm. This is you know, we've been talking about it many times, but people have been accepting of it. Well, yeah, they're accepting the fact that when we look at like test scores, who's the worst on the list? We are. Who's the healthcare? Who's the worst? We are. Every metric, it shows us being on the bottom. Now, that's design. It's really not true, but that is the way the numbers are put in order for the system to perpetuate itself. We've got to shake that loose and say, well, wait, don't define me that way. I have opportunities, and to try to get people to buy into that they are not as they are projected to be in the statistics. These are real things and we can make a difference. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to change it. And the programs that we have to orient them towards making that change. When we say, oh, we're going to give $100 more to the foster youth for A, B for housing. Okay, let's put some parameters on that. Okay, put some parameters on that to say that this is how the expectation, this is what you can do with it. Somehow frame it such that they'll know how they can generate wealth, how they can start on moving towards being independent and free from the system. So I think that the education part of it is very important, and all of the programs that we have, that we go to people in terms of the county provided service or the city or whatever, that it be required that someone is there to talk about wealth and wealth generation, how to go about doing it. One item that I thought about was like a key thing as an introductory thing is to say, ask the person or people or group, what do you spend your money on? How do you spend your money? Just an idea, you know, what you spend on cars, parties, or clothes, or I mean, things. I just want a definition because we have the a notoriety, I guess, of being one of the cultures that spend more so than any other, that we just spend, but it's not for enhancing our particular position. So I think somehow we got to change that paradigm now to get onto us the idea that we got to change the mindset to say that you want to get out of this, you want to be independent of this, these are things you can do to be that way. So I think that my motivation is to change, to get the paradigm change And as when we deliver services, when they are delivered, that this be one of the modules that we have to share, we have to encourage, we have to do the things that are going to help us get out of the situation that we're in today.
Thank you, Mr. Forrest. Wow, y'all, rich conversation today. Thank you for the comments. I know I see, Mom, you were talking about the situation with your child being in services, and just, again, I just want to remind us about what Tamika had shared too about planting those seeds. She may not be responding to those seeds now because she's in crisis and doing what she's doing, but we're going to continue to plant the seeds. We want to plant the seeds. Rocio, do you have any final thoughts that you want to, before we close out here? Can't hear you. You're on mute. Rocio, you're on mute.
Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. So one quick question somebody asked is if they can have the contact information for both Tamika and Forrest. Is that okay? Are you guys okay with that?
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay. So we can share that out. I don't know if you want to do it in the chat box or if you want to send it out later. We will also send out the PowerPoint. I already put the video link in the chat. The reason why we're saying PowerPoint is there, if you notice, there were a couple of pages that had, hold on a quick second. There were a couple of pages that had resources. So you can then look at these as well, which are very useful. And some of you sent me some resources in the chat box as well. So we'll make sure to add those in. My apologies, I have a hard stop at 1 because I do have another meeting. So I want to wrap this up and thank both Tamika and Forrest for their generous time. There were so many comments in the chat box. I wish I could have addressed all of them. Some of them are around solutions. So I think I need to digest all this as well as my co-partners and all the comments that were given. I would like to make the commitment to see if we can do some workshops for community on financing and how to advance their finances and how to have the long-term goal of owning a home. So I'm committing to looking into that and seeing how we can make that happen, not just for our system families, but for community as a whole. So I will be in touch with both of you regarding that. So any last comments, Elizabeth or Forrest or Tamika, before we log off?
I would just like to say, hey, it's an opportunity. I'm on that side of the equation. We've got to change the way things are, and we've got to, if we can't get others to do it, we must do it ourselves. And that is a sure way of getting it done if we do it ourselves. And I'm doing it as much as I possibly can, wherever I can, whenever I can. I know that we can. We've come 200 years of all of the abuse that we've taken. Surely we can look at a way in which to create wealth to get us out of the situation even more. So thank you.
Lastly, the resources for housing and home buying. This is some great resources. Some have already passed from our last one. If you see the Empower Home Buyers City of Santa Clara webinar, but you do have programs that are out there. And this is what I talk about. This is what I send information on, and I will continue to do it. And the more I have, the more I'll continue to update you, Elizabeth, on, or anybody. But these are actual programs that can help you, where you can find homes where you don't have to go with investors as well. The HUD programs, if you're a good neighbor next door, this is stuff for teachers and first responders, where you can get homes on the HUD website for half off. These are some great resources that, again, maybe you can pass it along to some other people, but it definitely, when they send it, utilize it. And so I'm already ready to be mobilized. You got me fired up, Elizabeth. Let's go.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. And stay tuned for a survey. We'll be sending out this afternoon.
Okay.
Thank you. And I want to just end with, at the very beginning of the video, I don't know if you all heard that introduction when they had the Rubik's Cube or whatever that's called, but in that intro, they said the world is in our hands. and that really stuck with me. I wanted to put that out there. The time is now. We will continue to work together. There is a whole series of workshops coming forward, which we'll send out in the invites. Thank you so much for joining us.